You're tuned in to Inside Lowell. Inside Lowell podcast brought to you in part by Washington Savings Bank, serving the greater Lowell community for over 130 years. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. Unicare, offering a variety of plans for people insured under the GIC. At Unicare, your health is their top priority. Reverie 73, Lowell's #1 cannabis shop. Elevate your cannabis experience at Reverie 73. Hafner's, heating and cooling homes and businesses for nearly a century. Become a part of the Hafner's family. It kicks. Boston North Company, offering a wide variety of business solutions to help restaurant and retail clients save money. Boston North. And by Mahoney Oil Company, providing warmth and protection to families in Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. That's Mahoney Oil. And now, time for another Inside Lowell podcast. Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place.
Hello and welcome to another Inside Lowell podcast, an election 2023 special coming to you from the Inside Lowell studios in beautiful, historic downtown Lowell. I am your host, Teddy Panos, on Tuesday night, October 24th, on the eve of the start of early voting here for the Lowell 2023 municipal election, and the races have started to kind of formulate. The candidates have had their forums, and the crowds out there are buzzing, or not buzzing more specifically, but we still have an awful lot to talk about as we get closer to Election Day. And I remind everybody that we'll be bringing you election night coverage live on our website, InsideLowell.com, on our YouTube channel, and we won't be able to bring it to you on the other formats, but that'll be enough for you as well to check it out. And we've got a great election team that will include Jake Vitale, formerly of the Lowell Sun and the Fitchburg Sentinel. He'll be joining us, as well as Asa Stutz, helping us gather some numbers. We'll have a few other surprises for you as well. The rest of our election team sitting in here in studio with me right now. We're going to go right to left this time instead of right to left, because we're going to go ladies first. One of the more avid followers, commenters on social media of Inside Lowell, and one of the most passionate advocates out there as well. I'm excited to have Mona Tyree here in the studios with us. Hi, Mona. How are you?
Great. I'm happy to be here.
You say that now. Will you be a half hour from now after you've had to deal with Jack and I?
We will have to see.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I can't wait to kind of get your input on this race, because I know you follow it very closely and you're very passionate about it. In the center of our screen here, you may know him as the Lowell Citizen, that irreverent guy who takes a often humorous look at the city council meetings, and often the council is obliged by providing you lots of material.
Every week.
In real life, he is Ryan Gilday. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Teddy. How are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to have you here.
Yeah, swore I'd never be here, but here I am.
You did. You said that I'm not a podcast kind of guy, and yet obviously you are so energized by this year's election that you felt, I've got to talk about it.
I don't know if that's true, but yep, absolutely.
All right. That's our story, and we're sticking to
100%.
it. And of course, off to our far left, the third amigo tonight and a member of our pod squad, Jack Mitchell. Jack, it's always a pleasure to have you here. I am a little disappointed in the plain shirt. We've grown accustomed to some t-shirt or something with a logo or whatnot. What gives?
It warms my heart that you've noted that.
I do.
Yeah.
I noted you. Yeah. You're looking like Gilday over there. You know, you look like an attorney.
I came right from the office, and I was expecting to see the Cheap Trick shirt or something like that. I'd like to know who you're listening to at least.
So, yeah, exactly. So here we are. It's October 24th, as I mentioned. Tomorrow, voters will flock to the polls to start their early voting in Lowell, or their mail-in ballots will start arriving at City Hall. How do you see this election cycle? Is it as bland as, oops, that's the wrong camera angle.
Is it as bland as that board?
Is it as bland as our whiteboard that I just put up there for you? Or is there kind of just an undercurrent of excitement that we won't really get to see until Election Day? Mona, I want to start with you. Are you as excited about 2023 as you were 2021, the first year of district representation, when the city really was buzzing at this time of year?
It was. I am excited. I definitely am not as excited as 2021, but I am excited. I do think there is a buzz, but I don't know. It's kind of a quiet before the storm. So,
So I'm curious, when you say you're excited but not as excited, is it just simply the fact that the newness of district representation and what that will bring on election day means, or is it you're not as excited about the candidates or the choices or the number of competitive races, or in districts 1 and district 3, Pawtucketville and Belvedere, the lack of any race at all?
that's disappointing. So, in my opinion, I think everybody should have competition, if you will. So I do think that when there is nobody else competing with someone that's already currently in the seat, then there's not a lot of interest. Because to me, that means people are not interested, which is unfortunate, because you should be interested. And there should be, somebody you can healthily debate with, depending on what's going in your neighborhood, or if it's citywide. So it's not the same excitement, but it is exciting.
Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited no matter what. Like, I'd be watching pretty much any election in Lowell, but probably a freak in that regard. But, I don't see any or much excitement at all. I think many of the district races are kind of foregone conclusions, so there's not a lot of drama there. I might be somewhat biased in my neighborhood, I'm District 3, so there, as Mona was just talking about, John Leahy has no opponents, so there's not like, the neighborhood's not exactly at war with itself, so it's very sleepy over there. You've got some at-large guys coming through, but that's pretty much it, so when I hearing reports on other districts, it's somewhat the same. I don't, maybe there's some interest in maybe District 5 or maybe over in 7, I don't know, just because there's so few votes over there, you don't know what's going to happen, I guess. But it is somewhat disappointing, I think. But at the same time, I think maybe it shows, I think maybe people are just satisfied with where we are right now. So that maybe there's not a need for a war just 2 years into the new system. So I think that might have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, I've heard that sentiment as well. You know what? Maybe people are happy with their district representatives. Jack, we've talked about this on a number of other previews, as we've done one every month. What are you sensing? Is there a definite lack of buzz, or is there an undercurrent under there that might surprise us?
I mean, I agree with Mona that I think every district, every candidate should have someone to run against. I think that helps turn out voters. Part of the reason we went to charter change was to shrink turfs down, as the operatives like to call it. That means that someone that works hard can knock the doors and meet the people and make a convincing argument. And so we don't have that. I don't hear particularly a lot of buzz. I don't know if that's just because there's less contested seats, or there's less seriously contested seats, and so nobody really wants to upset anything. They just want to kind of go along to get along.
Look, let's start with Belvedere, which is the neighborhood, right? And we saw them. They can get active when they want to. A week and a half ago, they held a meeting that shifted the ADU outcome, so we know they can get energized. How on earth, and no indication of what I think of John Leahy as a counselor, but how on earth in a neighborhood that is that engaged historically does nobody say, you know what, let me just throw my name on the ballot for the heck of it? Because we saw it happen. I feel that that's happened in a couple of other districts, and we'll get to them, where somebody just said, yeah, let me just put my name in there because I'm not letting so-and-so run unopposed. And who knows, if he or she steps down, who knows, maybe I get a council seat. Mona, what gives in Belvedere?
I'm not in Belvedere. I don't know.
Yeah, but you watch them.
I do. And I'm really not sure. And I think maybe they are just happy. They're kind of complacent in where they're at with what's going on in their area.
Yeah. Ryan, you're a Belvedere resident.
I'm a Senable guy, but I'm living in Belvedere right now, right? So, I've thought about that question a lot. How is it that in a neighborhood has a reputation for being that politically active, that someone can go unopposed? And, I kind of think that Leahy's kind of the right man for the job. I'm not talking about policy wise, but I'm talking about, like, if you look at the council under the new system, you now have a Corey Robinson hammer and Senable every week. You have Paul Rathayum. Every issue that comes up, he's talking about Belvedere, right? So you have these other people finally getting a seat at the table and finally advocating for neighborhoods that have probably been, or in fact certainly were, underrepresented in years past. Whereas before you had a majority of the council from Belvedere. So Belvedere had gotten plenty of attention, right, in years past. So you get a guy like John Leahy, who's very responsive. If I were to call him, I'm sure he would call me back on an issue, but he's not a guy that's going to be in meetings pounding the table talking about Belvedere all the time, So I think he's kind of in the right man for this moment in time, in that he's kind of somewhat in the background, not really advocating for Belvedere as hard as, like, say, a Corey would advocate for Senable. And I think maybe the city needs that right now. I don't know that will last. I think it's a matter of time before the folks at Belvedere, are demanding their seat back at the table. But I think it kind of makes sense to some extent.
Yeah, so actually I'm going to use this opportunity to see if I can get Jack's blood boiling, because he's sitting there
I saw him turn his head, so I knew a thought came in, but yeah.
There's a word that if I mention it, you'll see it.
Okay.
And that word is Long Meadow.
Right.
I stopped up there for a drink after dinner on Thursday night. My cousins hang out there. I went up there with my wife, and immediately a couple of folks came up to me. It was 2 nights after the ADU vote, and they were basically saying, good thing John did what he did, or else, we could have mounted, somebody could have run a sticker campaign and beaten him. Is that accurate? Was John that vulnerable?
No.
Yeah, and under a sticker campaign?
No, and there are rules to sticker campaigns. I mean, you'd have to talk to the elections office to know exactly. It's not a thing that I'm familiar with. But I know enough to know that there are rules about it. You'll see that in the calendar that the city puts out, because the city, sticker campaigns are what? Like, that's, you fill in a blank, and if you fill in enough blanks, it counts for something. It's hard to muster. And I think one of the things, and this is sort of my beef in a way with Long Meadow, is I think John is advocating probably somewhat aggressively for Belvedere. He just does it under the table. So, like, Corey is banging the desk because that's what he knows in terms of transparency in the council sessions. He's the guy that has the most emotions. And, whether he values transparency or he's just trying to sort of like invest in the new system. Whereas John's a guy that has a lot of friends. He's got a lot of friends in the nooks and crannies of the city.
The senior counselor, as he reminded us one evening.
Yeah. So I think he is. And I think anybody in Belvedere knows that if John needs to get a pothole with a blaze orange circle around it on 133, he's the guy to do it.
And yet that ADU vote completely seems shifted the political landscape heading into this election, right? People were threatening, John with probably a future election, threatening Councillor Noon, Mayor Chow, and you saw them kind of give into that pressure of that Belvedere meeting. Does it shift anything else? Does anything change? And what I've heard from some folks, they're speculating, does Vesna Noon drop to second as a result of this whole thing, even though he changed his vote? Some folks have told me he finishes out of the money because he won't be forgiven for having that stance in the first place. I think that's foolish, but I don't know. Is there something to that? Is there a race where we'll see what happened because of the ADU issue, both leading up to it, but also the actual vote itself?
We possibly. I for me personally, I think when you've made a decision and because you're pressured, if you're just going to change your vote because you're pressured, that's a problem. I think you stick with your vote.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that he would lose votes from the anti-ADU crowd. It's possible, right? Because he didn't support it, or he didn't oppose it in the way that they would have liked him to have opposed it from the very beginning, right? So there was that block of four that was always opposed to it, whereas he was sort of late to the party, right? So, as an analogy, if you go back to like Cory Belanger in 2017 with the high school debate, right? I think he had his best performance ever. People backed him because they had to, because they were running that slate. I think he got 4,700 votes thereabouts. And then in 2019, he lost about 1,000 votes, right? So he should have, I would think, kept those votes, but he actually fell 1,000 votes, probably because he didn't support Cawley, maybe as a theory, in the way that they wanted him to support Cawley. So I can draw an analogy between what happened to Cory and perhaps what may happen to Vesna. And then you also have the flip side of that, whereas because Vesna changed his vote, which is what Mona's getting at, maybe there are some people out there who would back away from him for being seen as a flip-flopper, you know.
Jack? Vesna drop from the top of the ticket?
So, I mean, one of the benefits of being at the top of the ticket is that you have room to fall, right?
And he has a lot of cushion.
That's right. And I'm sure he is aware of that. Whether people reward or penalize him based on his pivot, that remains to be seen, right? Some people want to reward that you vote the way they want you to. Some people reward what they think. I've heard plenty of voices out there that have said, you know, I don't agree with you, but you stand your ground, and I respect that. All right, I hear that a lot. So I don't know how that all comes up. What's interesting to me, I guess, is Cory Belanger worked hard to associate himself to the anti-ADU side, right? Mm-hmm. He went to the meeting in the Riley School. He was at City Hall, all right? So, you know, he saw a window, because, you know, he was sort of on the outside looking in, right? So now he has this window of opportunity. You know, I didn't see Bobby Tubielli going up there and saying, I support ADUs. He hasn't been vocal about his support for ADUs, like Cory Belanger was about his, being against ADUs. And then there's a Rock. I don't know what he's doing. I think he's just got his name out there so that people know who he is. I think that it's a positional race or a name recognition. He's just trying to build, because he doesn't seem to be running. And then if I am not remembering another candidate, I don't mean it to be disrespectful.
Forget Gitch.
No, I know. I say, well, I count Gitch here as in the top three.
He's just assumed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, no, I see Rita, Vesna, and Gitzier as exceptionally well positioned, with Belanger as on the, you know, because people have voted for Belanger multiple times in the past, right?
He's close.
And Bobby came on late. He's just starting to raise money now. People know him, but, you know, being known isn't necessarily the best thing, because they know what they know. And then Varrock, I think the whole point of Varrock's candidacy is just for people to know, right? Like, in a way, Varrock might be running what Bobby ended up with in the last cycle, which was name recognition. Now it depends on what he does with it over the next, or his future here in the city.
So looking at the two camps, it was funny to me that there were a couple of folks who spoke in favor of ADUs and says, anyone who votes against this is never getting my vote again. And the funny thing is, I'm assuming a lot of those were Vesna voters. And then conversely, you had anyone who votes for this is never getting my vote again. But that said, so if you happen to be on that side, well, there's four of them.
Yeah.
You've got to pick three. Who gets rewarded, who gets ignored? That's why I question whether it'll even be an issue.
Yeah, I don't think that the issue itself is large enough to be throwing, so we were speculating earlier what would happen with it. That's speculation. I don't think that the issue is large enough to have really tipped the scales in the way that we were talking about, I think if it had gone the other way, if the vote had gone the other way, I think you would have seen more of that mobilization from the Riley School rally crowd, potentially, So
you think they would have abandoned Vesna?
I think they would have. I think they would have flexed some more political muscle. I don't think the way the vote ended up, it's going to have. It's just speculation, but I just don't see it as being that big of an issue. I was a huge pro ADU supporter, right? I'm not going to walk away. I'm a Vesna supporter too. I'm not going to walk away from Vesna because he's flipped his vote. It's just not. It's unreasonable of me to expect a politician like Vesna to die on that hill for a piece of legislation that might not have been all that popular to begin with. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if, like I said, I've probably written more on ADUs in the positive than anyone. Not that there's anyone else writing anything, but you know, I just don't see it. I don't see your average voter even caring that much.
So we actually have a little anecdotal example there. A Vesna supporter, and you say you're not flipping because
No, I would not.
flipped his
Not
vote.
on that. Not
So
on
you got to
that.
wonder how many others are
That's
like
my
that.
point. Yeah.
Well, are any of the pro ADU people going to flip on him though? Like the young lady who threatened.
Yeah, I can't
to do so
I
and
can't speak for
whatnot?
them. I can only speak for myself. I mean, it's certainly possible and foreseeable, but I don't think there's enough of them in number
So
that
who
he's
is,
going to drop out at the top three. Yeah.
so who become your at-large candidates? Mona, everyone just kind of assumed, you know, Rita, Vesna, Rita, 1, 2. That's kind of how it's gone for the last 3 election cycles. Is that they still safe?
I think they are.
So who slides into number 3?
Eric.
Eric Kitcher? Ryan?
I have the same three.
You have the same
Yeah,
top 3?
I was at that. Jack and I, we didn't go together, but we were both at that meeting, the ADU meeting in council chamber. And as Jack would say, there's a lot of high propensity voters there, right? And I was surrounded by them, and they were swooning when Gitcha got up to take the mayor's chair, you know, and that kind of told me something when Chow came down to address the council.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think that Eric would be Belvedere's cup of tea, right?
Well, I think he had that crowd eating out of the palm of his hand, you know. And as Jack says, there's a sort of a language that you can speak to high propensity voters with, and Eric has been pointed out on this podcast before. He's very good at speaking that language. So I think that he has had a large soapbox over the past 2 years, and he's used it probably more effective than anyone else in terms of the at-large crew. And I think that that's going to pay off. I mean, I think he's going to do well. I mean, it's just speculation, of course, but my gut tells me he's going to do pretty well on the 7th.
Jack, do you have a similar top 3?
Yes, exactly the same top 3. I mean, there's talk about Rita potentially with her voter base sort of aging out, moving on, right? That there might be a structural weakness there. But I know she also has a broad support out in the communities that are out there. It's not just constituent services, but she knows how to grip and grin, and there's a lot of people that are very supportive. I mean, she does well in every single neighborhood, in every single ward and precinct historically. So she's not beholden to any particular neighborhood or group or clique to hold her up. But there are people that said that they thought she was weakened. You know, Vesna, I think Gitzier, you know, he's definitely benefits from that idea of, I don't always agree with you, but I respect the way you stand your ground. And as I've been saying for a while, I think there are friends of the city manager that like someone in there running roughshod over him and his administration, and they want that abrasion to try to keep things, you know, going operationally better.
All right, let me play devil's advocate, because I like to do that. If you put a gun to my head, I'd tell you Rita, Vesna, 1, 2, flip them. I'm not sure yet. I believe you flip a coin between Eric Gitcher and Corey Belanger. I think Corey always is close enough to give us a little bit of suspense. I also am curious, is there an avenue for Bobby Tubielli to sneak in, because the Gitcher crowd and the Belanger crowd know that they both give the first 2 seats, so they now know, okay, it's going to come down to my guy, and they kind of split enough of those votes to allow Bobby Tubielli to sneak in. He got over 4,000 votes.
He did
last time, which was kind of impressive, because you got to figure, you know, 3 incumbents, Vesna, Rita, John Drinkwater. For Bobby to get 4,000 votes, that is some support. Now, I don't know if he can maintain it, and then conversely, Virak Oy, none of us saw Sokari Chow come, right? in 2017, right? He finished 10th.
He finished 10th. Yeah.
He was a pro-collie counselor who came very close to getting on that council, and then I believe finished 5th in 2019, and then blew out Justin Ford. Are we underestimating Virak Oy?
I think we're properly estimating Virak Oy. I think I tend to agree with what Jack said. I think it's a get your name out there type of a deal. But back to your point about Bobby, is there a path forward for him? I don't think we know what his ceiling is yet, and I think it's possible he hit it last time around. He had a lot of money behind him. I think at this point, through September of the last election cycle, he had spent, I want to say, $18,000. Right now, he has spent, I want to say, $8,000. So he's running behind.
The advertisers are calling.
Yeah, there we go. That must be it. They can't wait to get in on this
I want to
action.
hold off on this podcast.
Yeah. Can you say something?
So I don't think we know what his ceiling is. I mean, maybe he blows the doors off just because he's had another cycle of name recognition out there. You know, I saw him on my way into the studio. He was holding a sign at the corner of Andover and Rogers Street. You know, so he is out there working. He's come to my door. He's one of only 2 people that. Well, I guess Corey did. I wasn't home, but. You know, so he is out there taking doors. So he is working. So I think I wouldn't rule him out. And I wouldn't rule, as you said, Corey Belanger out. He knows how to run a race.
Mona, is there a path for Bobby Tubielli or Virak Oy?
I think so for both. You know, Bobby has been this route before, and he's running again. He is out there, and I do think that he has some great ideas, but I don't know if the great ideas are enough to get him a position, but I definitely think anything's possible. Virak, I difference in opinion. I don't think he's just there for his name. I do think that he does care about the city, and he does care a lot about the youth. So involving the youth in a lot of different avenues, I think, is what Virak is doing. So, you know, I never say anybody's completely out. There's definitely potential for both. And that's what I'm going to say.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the youth with Virak Oy. So last night I hosted our Inside Lowell Telecommunications and Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce at-large debate. And we haven't published it yet, but it will go up tomorrow, Wednesday. So folks will get to see it. And Virak Oy talked an awful lot about schools. That is his background, and youth. I almost got the sense, man, if this guy ran in the school committee, there's a definite avenue there.
Yeah, so you had him in the studio, and you asked what his top priorities were, and he said something about it was schools and something like that, and then you wanted to tease a little more out. It was like, well, you're running for school for city council, so how are you gonna support the schools? And then it was another, like, you know, platitudes, I believe children are the future, you know, teach them well, let them lead the way type of thing. And so again,
can you sing it?
Being a seasoned broadcaster, you started laying down breadcrumbs, you know, that he didn't pick up. You're like, well, some people might say that the city council doesn't do enough to support the school system, whereas if you had asked the same question to Corey Belanger, he'd pick it up and say, oh yeah, I talked to teachers who don't have enough air conditioning. You know, and he would make that pivot. He'd be seasoned enough to make that pivot and say, we need to spend more on facilities. Or Eric Gitcher would say, we need to have a joint facilities department. And Virak, he didn't take it. It didn't go anywhere. It just was more platitudes about children are awesome and I believe in education. You know what I mean?
I'm just
I'm not saying
you remember that interview. I completely forgot, but you're right.
As I said earlier, I'm a freak, but you know, nevertheless,
attack, but maybe a freak.
But my point is that I'm not questioning his commitment to the city. I'm questioning how much he's gotten in there on some of these finer points. Where at me as a voter, just some guy on a couch would look at him and say, yeah, this guy, you know. Whereas right now, I'm just looking at him saying, well, this is the guy that just took the headshot from his state rep race and put it on a Lowell City Council side.
Wow, you're getting
so I haven't had the...
starring in the role of Jack Mitchell.
I really don't mean to do that. But like, I was excited to see a new face, and I wanted to know more. And without being given more in terms of substance, I have to revert to that. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
All right, let's switch to the district races, and I'll use the ADU issue to transition into that. So District 1, Dan Rourke unopposed. Yes vote. John Leahy was a yes vote till he switched the last night. He's running unopposed. Does anybody think Sokari Chow is going to pay the price against Justin Ford no matter what he voted?
No.
No. Okay.
But I think Ford will get more than 250 votes.
Okay.
Absolutely agree.
Interesting. I'll tell you what, after doing our debate, and I don't know if you didn't see it, I commented to Justin, I saw him grow
100%.
much more confident, much more comfortable in his skin as a political candidate. May not be a good thing if he's becoming more political, but I was impressed at how much he's grown. That said, I think Sokari's safe.
I think it was a good, I'm sorry, but I did watch it as well, and I think Justin did very well.
He did.
He has definitely
And he
grown.
stayed away from the politics across the Pacific, which I thought was important because I want to hear about Lowell. I want to know what you're going to do for Lowell, and I thought he did a really good job of that, where I was expecting he wouldn't.
He was confident enough to post it on Lowell Live feed, so he felt good about his what he.
I think he should have.
Sent. My hope for Justin is that because I'm about increasing the voter base, right? Like that's one of my primary motives, right? So I think if he does the work, if he sticks to the high propensity list, I'll be very disappointed. And we can look at the data to see if there's some first-time voters that are out there in that district. So my hope for Justin, because I think it would be foolish to think that he would win, I would like to see him bring in voters, first-time voters, because I think he's exactly the kind of person that could do that and would bother to do it.
That would affect other races. My hope for Justin is that he gets a job for a for-profit company and isn't, working for nonprofits to get vote out for them, as opposed to, again, for the benefit of the
But again,
city.
yeah,
Was that too harsh, Mona?
That is.
That was okay.
That is. You saw my face, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's exciting to see new candidates, no matter what, whether you agree with them politically or not. It's exciting to see, and especially, I mean, he's the youngest person by, I don't know how many years, 30.
Yeah, by far the most improvement from 2021, because I hosted a debate between him and Sokari in 2021 on the radio, and that was not the same guy.
Yeah.
Much better. Much better than our interview with him over the summer. Paul Ratayem, Fruit Kembang, ADUs won't be an issue there. Johnny Dakota versus, we think Tai Chum, not going to be an issue there. Kim Scott versus Susie Chun. What most people tell you is the race to watch on election night. You actually have a clear, distinct difference on the ADU issue there. What's going to happen in District 5? Mona, I want to start with you.
I don't know. I think that it's going to be very interesting because I think they both have valid points in both their races. And of course, Kim is the seasoned one, but I do think that Susie has a lot to offer as well. So I think they'll both do well. If I would have to call who's going to win, I don't think I could do that. I think it is going to be interesting to watch.
So you think a coin flip. By the way, I will have both of them sitting there tomorrow night, recorded, and probably publish that Thursday as well. So we'll get to kind of hear from them on the issues. Ryan, District 5, South Lowell, what happens?
I don't know. I wish we had the benefit of that debate going into tonight, right? Because as of right now, Susie's one of those candidates, kind of like Barack a little bit, where I don't know exactly where she's coming from. I've heard from other people that the mayoral vote is playing a role in her interest in the seat. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't heard it from her, and I'm also not in District 5, so I don't really know. But on the outside looking in, I haven't heard a case made that Kim should lose the seat. So I know where Kim stands. We've been hearing from Kim for 2 years. I don't know much about Susie. So again, I'll watch that debate. Definitely.
So you're the guy who the debates matter to. Because I'm of the opinion.
Well, no, because I'm not a District 5 voter. So, I mean, the last thing District 5 needs is a District 3 guy sticking his beak in. But, I'm a
Chelmsford guy.
Yeah, I'm curious more than anything. But, they're not gonna win my vote tomorrow or whenever it was. So, yeah. But I don't think the ADU issue will tip the scales in that district either.
Jack, we've talked about that race an awful lot on our election preview shows. Is that still the one to watch? Or has something shifted?
It's the only one that I think is even close. I've said it pretty much, my thoughts on it. I know that Kim does the work. I've seen her do the work since she ran for school committee. I know how she's wired for serving the community and how she sort of interacts with the people that are around her to get things accomplished. I see the engagement that she has with her neighborhood. I see sort of like the who the high propensity voters would be, and sort of her not affiliation, but you know, they are of her, she is of them, right? I think that is going to bode well for her. Susie, I think, has a lot of to offer, but I don't think, in a way, she's kind of got the problem maybe that Justin Ford had, in that she might be just a little bit too green, and I don't think she's been well advised in her campaign. I think she's got an albatross around her neck where people are thinking that she's much more interested in some sort of the optics of her election pointed at Cambodian national elections, and I don't know if she's shaken that. She hasn't shaken that in the bubble. And the thing that we talked about in one of the earlier podcasts is does she shake it on the doors? If she's knocking doors and she can impress upon those people that she vibes them, so to speak, and they see her going there and doing their will, being a good concierge to city government, then she's going to be more competitive than I would think, from what I see in the bubble. So as an outsider looking in, I think Kim smokes her.
You are watching Inside Lowell podcast, an election 2023 special. We've got part of our election team, Moto Tyree, Ryan Gilday, and Jack Mitchell here. Reminder, come election night, Tuesday, November 7th, we'll be going live on our YouTube channel and on our website, InsideLowell.com. Those three will be joined, of course, by yours truly, but we'll have Jake Vitale sitting here in the big seat as well. Asa Stutz will be joining us, and a few other folks helping us gather the votes. So we certainly hope you tune in, and we appreciate you tuning into this podcast. So we've left two district races open right now that we haven't discussed. One of them, I might have the potential to be close. Paul Ratayem and Froome Kembang, District 7, the Acre District. Any chance that Froome unseats an incumbent? Is that where we have our...
Anything's possible. But I don't think so. But again, anything's possible. I did listen to the podcast. I listened to a couple of different ones that they had, so it's interesting to hear both point of views. And I don't want to say I think that Froome will not win, but anything's possible.
A lot of folks carry credit Vesna Noon for carrying Paul Ratayem across the finish line in 2021 and what everybody originally thought was Dave Ouellette's race to win. Reports out there that there may have been a little bit of a falling out between those two camps, or at the very least, the relationship isn't as tight as it might have once been. Does that play a role? Does Froome capitalize on that in any way, Mona?
He could, for sure. But it depends on how well known. I think a lot of any of the races, how well known you are and where you show up and who you speak to. So it really does depend. I don't always think that candidates win just based on who you know politically. So,
okay. Ryan?
Yeah, again, outside looking in, I don't know enough about the inside baseball of who fell out with who or whatever, and I also don't know the popularity contest in the Acre. I can just go by what I've seen on your podcast, and they did one at the library. Those guys were at as well. So we've had the benefit of two debates, at least two. There might have been one on the radio as well. And again, I'm not seeing a case being made to unseat the incumbent. I think the closest thing I saw was that I walk the neighborhoods and Councillor Yem drives through the neighborhoods. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that resonates with voters or not. But for me, looking at it, I was like, oh, I don't really know that's if I lived in District 7, I don't know if that would be enough for me to want to unseat the incumbent.
Jack?
Both are some of the greatest guys you will ever meet, right? And if that translates at the doors, I think if we want to talk strictly like identity politics and a Southeast Asian candidate gets a Southeast Asian vote, I think that does happen. And not just Southeast Asians, Greeks vote for Greeks, Irish vote for Irish, right? Because they feel an affinity, like with knowing little, they just assume a commonality based on their ethnic, connection, right? So if it's not that district is one of the majority or majority minority, whichever way that we say it, right? Eminem did 6, right? That one leans the most Latino versus Southeast Asian, and I don't, Fru's not a Latino voter, right, or a candidate, but if he can connect to that aggregate of voters, if he can then connect to Southeast Asian voters in a human way beyond their ethnicity, if he can do that, then people might be peeled away. I don't think sort of the tribal thing of this side of the Asian chasm versus that side, because Paul isn't that guy. Paul is what I see as a guy that has been more neutral, and so I don't think there are going to be people that will be like, how dare you be neutral? Like, you need to be true to our allegiance to us, right? But I think most people, that's shit that they say, pardon my marriage, in bar rooms. But when they go to the voting booth, I think they're more thoughtful.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also such a small turnout district. There's fewer than 1,000 votes cast in 2021. So if Fru can drive out 600 people, which I don't think is a huge ask, then he could tip the scales. Obviously, I think that is potentially a path forward.
I think it's a tall task. I wouldn't completely rule it out. I'll tell you what, though, if Fru doesn't win, after listening to him debate Paul, I wish he'd run for school committee. He talks a lot that, you talked about Barack mentioning schools a lot. Fru mentioned schools a lot. He was very passionate about it. And I got to tell you, the school committee member who came the closest to losing last time was Dominic Lay. And I'm shocked that no one challenged him. I think Fru would have had a hell of a chance had he decided to run for school committee. And based on the issues that he's kind of promoting as a council candidate, I'm like, ooh, I think maybe missed opportunity here if he's not victorious. You're all nodding in agreement.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right. Last council race, District 4. Is it really a race? Wayne Jeunesse, Amada Gregory. I'm shocked they found somebody to run further left of Wayne.
I'm still waiting for Ramona to piss somebody off, as she sort of, suggested she might do. Here's your time. Here's your turn.
Jeez. So what I will say is that I haven't heard a lot from Amada. I've spoken to her, but I don't really know what her core foundation is for running. I know she is a people person and a community person. However, I don't know. I just really don't know why. I'm a little bit, perplexed, and not. I don't mean that in a negative to her, but I just don't understand. I don't know what's going on there.
That's her fault, and I'll jump in here. But she was offered plenty of opportunities to come sit in here with Wayne Jeunesse. She had an opportunity to do so on the radio as well. And in my political knowledge, as limited as it may be, if you're a challenger taking on an incumbent, you want to be on a debate stage with them. You want to be seen as side by side. You're equals. This one isn't the incumbent and you're the challenger. No, we're equals. Here's our positions where you are. And, there's a reason Trump and Biden won't get on a debate stage with anybody, right? Because they're not going to give them any legitimacy. Amada had multiple opportunities to do that. It's not like Wayne was ducking her and she punted on it, and I don't know why. I had multiple conversations
I don't
with her
understand.
telling her, I think it'd be good for you, Amata. And, it's not like I'm going to ambush her or anybody, but I think she, whatever chance she had to impress voters, I think she blew.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. It was scheduled, wasn't it? Wasn't it billed as like they were going to come in and debate?
on the radio debate, they
But
were,
in here in studio, no?
no, I could never get her to.
Oh, I
she had
see,
told
yeah.
me she'd
Right,
do
yeah.
yes, but she never. When it came
Well, I'm
time
thinking
to
of
get back-
Corey and
Corey and Marty,
Marty Hogan. That rescheduled? Or,
Yeah, I'm going to try to reschedule it. There was a cancellation on Friday night. We were supposed to
Okay.
record it last Saturday morning. So I'm still working on that, or maybe they
Mona
got
would
it out
have
of their
stopped talking
system.
about voting for Marty Hogan before we got on air. I don't know.
Maybe they got it out of their
Please.
system.
That is
on City
that
Night.
is definitely a rumor.
So, all right, so nobody.
I'm joking.
Nobody thinks Wayne Janess is in any jeopardy. Is Corey Robinson in any jeopardy?
I want to go back to Amata for a second.
Okay.
Not to really pick on Amata, because she seems like a very pleasant person, but I don't know. I've seen I observed some things. I think I might have said it earlier, where she was in a room with the bubble and she sat on it. What I saw was she didn't work the room. I actually don't like when people work the room, but I think it's a necessary evil, right? Like there's a phrase, you either move through the room or the room moves to you. Well, I didn't see either, and so I don't think that was helpful for her, and I agree pretty much with what's been said here. One thing I do want to sort of point out, though, is that Amata is a expression of Lowell votes. They did some work to try to educate potential candidates to help an activist sort of translate. And I know Amata has done lots of work in terms of out there in the community, trying to involve them in civic engagement, right? She, in many ways, is the candidate that I wish for, way more than Wayne. Wayne is not a grassroots types of guy. He might know hippies that sort of smell grassrootsy, but Amata is the real deal, all right? But something happened where I don't know what kind of training they give over at Lowell Votes, but either she's ignoring what they told her or they did not tell her the right thing. That type of grassroots training, somebody has to do a better job at that.
Excuse me. I don't think low votes is the reason, and I do think that low vote they do give good training, and I will say, because I spoke and I gave a class there, so I like to think that I know what I'm doing as well. But I don't know if it, I wouldn't say that it's low votes, but I will say that maybe she doesn't have the right. I don't know who her people are. Generally, who's everybody's people. So I don't know who her people are that have been encouraging or telling her what she needs to do, because I think that's the missed opportunity of not knowing exactly, how you have to play. And I say it's play a role because it's politics.
You're talking
Everybody's
about a kitchen
playing.
cabinet, basically, people that you have as a core of advisors that
Yes.
can kind of check you against yourself, if
Yes, or assist you on doing what you're looking to accomplish. I mean, you have to have somebody that's a good mentor. You have to have somebody that knows how Lowell is in the area, the district that you're running for. You need to know somebody in that district that can kind of show you. Everybody doesn't know all the ropes. So she is new to this, but I wouldn't blame it on one or the other. I just don't think that she's out there engaged enough, if that makes sense.
Solidarity, Lowell passed on endorsing her.
They gave 3 endorsements this time. I was
Yes.
stunned
In the city
at
council.
how few. Yes, 3 in the city council. Although I'm told that a number of people just didn't even bother this time.
The survey, they did that survey there. I think it was a small fraction that actually responded.
Right,
to
exactly.
It. Yeah.
People didn't want the endorsement. I was reminded of Harry Cornick when I announced on radio that he got endorsed by Solidarity Lowell, and he immediately called into the show to say, I didn't seek it. I just answered their questionnaire. But Johnny Dakota, I almost forgot District 8. Johnny Dakota, Ty Chum. All indications are Ty is not really mounting any serious campaign. Very politely declined to do a debate here. Ditto WCAP. I almost get the sense Ty thought, because he and Eric Gitcher had formed kind of a good friendship. They were very civil to each other. And I think he thought when Gitcher announced he was running at large, if Ty just threw his name in there, then he would be the natural successor. And then here comes a guy with a bigger political name in Johnny Dakota than Eric Gitcher even. And I think Ty said, I don't want to get trounced again. I'm not going to put in the work. But he is on the ballot, though. He got the signatures.
Sure looks that way. Yeah.
So I'd have loved to have seen a little more of him during the campaign, because he's a really good guy. You want to talk about good people? He's a great, great guy.
I don't remember what the vote total was, but was he trounced by Gitcher? Or maybe was it 2-1 or something like that?
I think, honestly,
it wasn't a
most of the races were like 72-28 or whatever. The closest were the the Elliott Rourke race, the Yem Willette race, and then I think there was a little bit of drama in the downtown as well. But
so I would have liked to have seen more, but it is what it is.
Can't leave without talking about can't leave this subject without talking about the only school committee race. Stacey Thompson.
We have a school committee?
Yeah, we have a school committee.
The school committee.
We may not want to admit it all the time, but Stacey Thompson, the incumbent in District 1, which is Pawtucketville and Upper Highlands, versus Fred Bahu. You've got a Pawtucketville candidate who I think surprised some folks in 2021 against Upper Highlands candidate who's a veteran, at least out on the Greater Lowell Regional Technical High School committee. What happens? Who wins that race, Mona?
I'm with Stacey.
What is she?
I said I am with Stacey.
Oh, you're with Stacey. Oh, okay.
I am with Stacey.
I thought you asked what's Stacey.
So no. So I'm not as familiar. Of course, I have known Stacey professionally and personally for over 30 years. And Fred, I am not as familiar with at all. That's not my area, but I'm not familiar with him. But I have been listening to what he's talking about as for school-wise. And I think that he does have some ideas, but I don't think some of the ideas, and to me, just the way that I'm looking at it, is he is a Voc person, and he's looking at, not that Voc isn't Lowell, but he's looking at the schools in Lowell as a Voc, and it's different. It's different. I understand putting in, I know Lowell High already has some of those type of shops, if you will, but we're not looking for another Voc. There are students that want to go to college that don't want to learn just a trade. So I think, there's some things that I think he has good ideas, but I don't necessarily agree with the ideas for our school systems here.
Do you think he might win that race?
I don't know, because I'm not familiar with them. Like I said, I would think Stacey would win. I think she has. I do think that she has shown that she is compassionate about the kids, and I think with her teaching skills and the knowledge based on that, I think that she should win. But I don't necessarily, of course, even have a say either way.
Ryan, any?
I have no opinion. I agree with what Mona said. I really, honestly, I've not spent 1 second following it, so I couldn't even hazard anything approaching an opinion.
Isn't that sad that one competitive school committee race, and even that one, a bunch of folks just don't care? And listen, I'm guilty of it myself. I barely pay attention to the school committee. I did find their debate that they had here interesting, and I thought they both kind of had some clear differences set aside in a respectful way. But what a shame. We're told the kids are the most important thing, right? They're our future, and nobody cares.
don't know if they don't care. There's so many unopposed races that it's, you can almost gloss over it. Like, what's the point? I mean, that race that we were just discussing, it's not in my district, Whereas, city council, I'll watch a lot of council meetings, so I care about the composition of the council. The school committee, I don't watch any school committee. Every once in a while, if there's some hot button issue happening, But otherwise, no, I just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Jack, anything to watch in that school committee race?
Lots.
There you go. See, someone.
He's just being contrarian.
No, all right.
You watch. He's got some strong feelings about this.
Shut your mouth, kids. I'm going to show you how to.
Okay.
There's a couple of things to begin with. One is voter turnout. Pawtuckaville is a high propensity neighborhood. So is the Highlands. I don't know exactly what the district boundaries are there, but Fred smokes Stacy in the Highlands. Is it enough to overcome whatever votes are available over in Pawtuckaville? You'd have to look at them in sort of extreme views to say it was 100% Fred in Highlands and 100% Stacy in Pawtuckaville, then how would that match up? But Stacy's not going to pull. I'd say Fred pulls 80% of the vote in the Highlands.
Wow.
All right.
Which tells me he'd have a significant chance at win.
I think he has a significant
simply
chance.
because there's no competitive district. If you had a rematch of Rourke and Elliott,
that's right.
Pawtuckaville shows up, but you don't have that. Now you got Dakota, Gittier, and Bahu, 3 Upper Highlands candidates on that ticket.
It gets even sweeter though. Because there's no competitive race over in the Highlands. It's really, I'm sorry, the Pawtuckaville, right? It's going to rely
You were
on
right the first time as well.
Yes, I was, but accidentally. It's going to be, what kind of turnout is there in Pawtuckaville? And, is there anything going on in the at-large race? I think so. I think there's no love lost between Gittier and Danny Ballgame, right? So there's a lot of what Gittier is doing is a referendum on the manager and what's the next 2 years of the manager's life going to be. And so that's going to be a very pro-TIPA neighborhood. And Gittier is going to have a tougher row to hoe over there. But there's another dynamic, which is Fred is closely aligned to Eric Gittier. Will Danny work harder for Stacy to try to help Stacy, to beat Fred, to sort of send a message back at Gittier? So don't miss that connection. But
have you seen any indication of that? I haven't.
No, because I don't look. People know kind of, where it's Gittier's tough with me because I really like the stuff that he does. I just don't like the way he does it. And I talk to him all the time. Well, not all the time, but enough, once every couple of weeks or whatever, right? And but if I had one vote like that, that I would vote for him. If I have one vote for at large, that would be the vote that I would give. Another part of that though is say Rodney Elliott. All right. Rodney Elliott barely beat Zoe. All right. Stacy is an African-American woman. Rodney Elliott is going to be looking to bolster himself amongst communities of color. He's not, which is in a way weird, right? Because Fred Bahu is a person of color. It's because he's a man doesn't mean that he's not a person of color. He is a person of color. Middle Eastern color, right? So there's...
Well, listen, if Rashida Tlaib gets to make that claim and it's supported by the the mainstream media, Fred Bahu is Middle Eastern. He's Syrian.
He isn't. Well, no, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a question,
So,
right? I don't know your obscure reference, but whatever. All right. Rodney Elliott needs to bolster himself amongst the community of color. He will now be rowing in the same direction as potentially Dan, right? So if Danny and Rodney are working in the same towards the same goal, even though I'm sure they're not collaborating, right? Could that help Stacy? If she has a chance, that's her chance.
See, leave it to Jack to enter a little intrigue into a race. Now I'm going to have to start.
I'm impressed
kicking the
by
tires to
the
see.
analysis. I'm still not interested, but I'm very impressed by everything that you just did there.
I want to hug you.
I still
after
don't
this.
care.
You still don't care.
Mona,
It was
So-
compelling, but I
So
you had a thought.
yeah, so I guess, well, I'm gonna call it as I see it. So you're saying because Stacey is an African American woman that the only way that she wins, are you saying that she can't say the only way that she wins is if Rodney and Dan help her with that because they're looking for people of color, even though you stated that Fred is a person of color as well?
No, I'm saying
I want to just clarify.
Danny is oriented, would just be naturally aligned against Bahu because of his association. So it's not really about ethnicity in that situation.
Okay.
All right. And Danny supported Zoe. So Danny doesn't openly right? So I don't think anybody has to concern themselves about what Danny's sort of mindset is in terms of minority representation. All right. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions, which I usually do, right, about Rodney. I'm not trying to suggest anything about how he feels about people of color. I'm sure he's a fine person, a good Catholic. All right. But his votes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry, but I was about to say, what do you mean a good Catholic? Because that's a whole nother subject.
That's a whole nother
So let's
subject.
go ahead.
All right. Well,
Go ahead,
I
sorry.
pick my words carefully.
Okay, go ahead.
So it doesn't look like it, but I do.
Okay.
I feel like you're about to get caught in the line.
Hey, no, go back a little.
I wanted to make sure there was a clear line of sight here.
But the structural weakness of the Rodney campaign was for I'd say first and foremost gender. Right, that was the year that there was a lot of the reversal of Roe v. Wade. So Zoe had a lot of sort of wind in her sails because of that, right? But Rodney's been working very, very hard to try to convince people that he should keep that seat this next cycle, all right? And part of it is he's now working extra hard to get sort of some progressive love, because if anybody knows anything about Rodney Ellie, he's not a particularly progressive person, all right? No.
And yet he seems to be governing that way as a state rep. Let me see if I can get you to really take a leap off the cliff.
Good.
Has Rodney Elliott been a good state rep?
Depends on what you mean by good. I have very low. I think people that are first elected into the House of Representatives, I don't think anybody even bothers to tell them where the bathroom is. All right. So I think they work extra hard to just sort of make themselves known outside of the city of Lowell, right, or wherever their area is. So I don't really grade any of the state reps, or particularly Rodney, based on what the bringing home the bacon, right? I mean, he's been bending over backwards to say like he has the inside scoop on a variety of things. And I think that's just more towards him trying to bolster his reelection, right? He wants to be seen as the guy that can do the job down on Beacon Hill. Because I think it was so close, right, that he feels vulnerable. And he's been trying to make inroads with a variety of groups, right? He seems to be doing pretty well with organized labor. I guess his voting history in the city council means nothing, because the organized labor are like, well, what are you doing for me now, right? What are you doing for me lately?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the world, right?
Progressives and maybe communities of color, if they're starting to sort of like, well, whatever, that's Rodney from the past, like we only care about what he's doing today. That's a very transactional relationship. And I think that's exactly the kind of relationship that Rodney specializes at. So Rodney and Danny may end up collaborating to try to bolster Stacey. Is that going to be enough? I don't think so.
He
Thank
did
you.
everything he could to avoid saying that Rodney Elliott has done a good job as a state rep. Did you notice that? One of these podcasts.
He did well.
Get you to say
He
that.
did well.
All right, we've crossed the 1 hour mark, so I'm confident that we can get from 7 to 8 p.m. when the results start coming in on election night. So good job, folks. But I'm not going to let you leave yet because I want to turn to the last thing, and you touched on it quickly. Turnout. A lot of these races, or not a lot, the races that are going to be competitive, if they're going to be competitive, are going to be a turnout situation here. We started this podcast by everybody agreeing that there's just not as much buzz as there was last time. So what's the turnout going to be?
Low. I don't think it's going to be very high at all.
11,600. That's my number.
You have a number.
What were we at, Jack? Was it 13,000? Did we get to 13,000 last time? Close, right?
High 12s to 13.
It was in the 12. We didn't crack 13.
Right.
But I think we might have had a lot more registered voters in 2021. From what I understand, the voter list got culled significantly, although, now with people kind of submitting, it's going back up. So we may actually have less voters, but a higher turnout percentage, because I think we were like at 19% turnout last time on the percentage.
I never look at percentages because with motor voter, it's a false number. I really only look at total number of voters. You were 11,600.
That's my prediction.
I don't even think it's.
I don't want to do the prices right and say 11,500. But I'll say 11,200. It's going to be
very low.
Greater than 10, right?
Yeah.
But it won't make 12. It'll be much less than the last cycle where everybody was really pushing for the charter change, and there was a lot of people knocking doors. I don't see people working as hard.
Holy smokes!
I don't even think.
Except for hopefully Justin Ford. I hope Justin really pushes some voters out there.
All right. So then, since we're all in agreement on that, allow me to be the ass here and say, so why are we wasting all this time? I'm amazed every election cycle. We got to get out the vote, get people to vote, voter education efforts. How can let's drive a limousine to pick them up and take them to the polls, or have the limousine bring ballots to their house. We do everything we can to get people to vote, and nobody's voting early. It's wasted money in person early. Last time we at least got a significant number, I'm told 40-something% of people doing mail-in ballots in the municipal election, which is at least, okay, that's legit. This time, 68 ballots as of last Saturday, 68 ballots had been requested, not even sent in. We're going to double that in the next week or two. We're going to triple it. So
do nothing and get 6,000 people to turn out, and they're all from Clark Road and Douglas Road, and they set the agenda on the city. That's why you get people out to vote, because you get new voices. Yeah, they care because they're franchised. They're not disenfranchised. You know what I mean? So I disagree with your premise that it's a waste of time.
So disenfranchised, or
here we go.
They just don't
Jesus
care.
Christ! At the end of the hour, we have to stop this shit. I gotta run, and we're gonna have to get into the goddamn.
Put him on the pod squad.
We get into the
I've got an alternate.
We got him fired up.
I was talking to Jack at the council meeting.
We didn't go together, though.
We did not go together. No, we did not. Haverhill is a long way from my house, but nevertheless,
you're now invited.
I was. Thank you. You have ADUs there. I was saying and the thing about Inside Lowell is we don't have to hear Teddy's dog shit radio opinions anymore. And now here we are. I got to run.
Now you have
and here we have it. So what was the question? I'm sorry.
Are they really disenfranchised, or are they just not giving?
Yeah, well, when you don't have a representative carrying forth the issues that are important to you, then yes, that is disenfranchisement. And when you can't crack through to even get a seat at the table, that's disenfranchisement. Yeah, I fundamentally believe that.
Isn't that what district representation was supposed to change? All those
Who said it didn't?
All those disenfranchised people in the acre have Paul Ratayama or Froon Kembe.
You bring up an issue at city council if it's about So if it's about painting crosswalks, before they move on to the next issue, Councilor Yem is going to get on the microphone, and I'll be screaming at home, just shut up and move on to the next issue. But he'll say, I know that in the acre on Broadway, we just put in a crosswalk and it's much better. Thank you very much. Or we need one over, branch, whatever, pick a spot, and he will give the acre perspective. That has not happened as long as I've been watching the council meeting. So to your point, yes, I think that does lead to franchisement, if that is a word.
Well, we agree on that. People, having the district representatives is great for that district.
Right.
And still they're not coming out to vote. It
has not been 24 months yet.
I think it's going to get worse as we go. Who's going to challenge? Let's say all the incumbents win this time. Who's going to challenge Corey? I think they're nuts to challenge Corey now. Who's going to challenge Paul? Who's going to challenge Wayne? I think
the bar will be low if they do want to challenge it, because like it was said earlier, all you have to do is hit doors, and you only have to do it within about a 4 square mile radius. It's a lot easier if you did want to challenge someone. It's going to be easier to do it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. And again, if your issues are being carried forth on the council floor, then maybe you don't need to challenge Corey. Maybe you don't need to challenge Councilor Rem. As long as you're being represented, then I think the system works.
Want to finish it up, Jack?
If you want to run against Corey, call me. I'll help you.
You'll help him?
You got the blueprint?
I'll give you the ad lib book, right? Like, you got to fill in your special sauce.
Are you helping Marty Hogan?
Absolutely not. Because he's not, I mean, I don't know. There's a personal thing there, right? Like, yeah, I've got to generally agree with like sort of your mindset and your perspective on things, right? Me and Hogan are not going to match up, but I mean, I think I give people advice all the time when I'm doing this podcast or when I'm writing stuff on the blog, right, the Facebook page. So it's like I think I help those people a lot. But, if you want to go to, I'm sorry, if you want to go to Lowell Votes and get bad advice or something, like, I don't know what to do. I know I've been doing this for a little while.
Lowell Votes calling them?
There's a way to do it. But I want to go back to like your thing about the expenses and the operational sort of the infrastructure of elections, right? And the costs associated to it. One, local elections are not state elections or federal elections. So if you do one sort of the state election or the federal election that way, you should do it for the local elections, because you don't want to make local elections leg day, right? Like every day, every election cycle, you want to put that office through their paces. That's a quality control, quality assurance mechanism. Make sure they know how to conduct an election.
So let's have the municipal election where a very limited number of people show up so that they practice for the state or the presidential election on the even numbered year. Believe it or not, that freaking makes sense.
Okay, but also I'll say if we get ward bosses, then we talk term limits. The thing is if you want to like hit the council like that, like changing the name for mayor, those effing portraits, they're not going to do that shit. We have to do that at them. All right. They're not going to take it amongst themselves unless you can get candidates to run as a slate saying, we all favor term limits. I bet you if there's 8 districts, if 6 people ran in favor of term limits, all right, that might get traction. But as a person that proposes term limits, I don't think we're there yet. This whole thing is new to us. The people that want to shit on district representation, the hybrid stuff, they're going to try to sow those seeds now. All right. I think it needs a little time to sort of mature and ripen on the vine. Let's talk 4 cycles from now. But term limits.
Oh my God, I think we found another issue that you and I are going to agree on in the future. I think you're going to have to go there because ward bosses has a negative connotation, right? It means the person's basically corrupt, running things, strong-arming people. It can also, to me, it means why bother going and knocking doors on an August night? Go to your kid's baseball game. Because this person's popular and they're going to beat you. I think we're moving there. I'm actually stunned at how rapidly we moved there. I thought it would happen when Marty Laurie first proposed that to me. He said it's going to become like a state rep race. I thought it would happen. I thought we'd have at least a couple of election cycles before that set in.
But you're already seeing people sort of moving on up, right? So get your moves out of the Highlands because he wants an at-large seat. Probably, I don't know what the benefit is other than he seems to be more focused on citywide issues versus Highland issues, and maybe you get fewer phone calls about trash pickup or whatever, potholes in your neighborhood, right? So eventually people are going to want to move. That's just the nature of the beast, is that, a state rep seat opens or the register of deeds retires. People are going to move up, and the people are going to want those higher, that's the quote unquote higher office, if you consider an at-large seat a higher office, right? So, I mean, for a lot of these people, it's just a stepping stone anyways, right? I don't know that anyone is setting out to be the ward boss of Senable. I would take that title because that would be awesome. But nevertheless, I don't see people just stagnating in a district council seat for 30 years. I mean, I guess it could happen, but
it
I just don't see
happens.
it. It does, I
It's
guess.
been
But I mean,
happening.
well, has it
There are
happened
some
yet? I
people-
mean, there's people that are you look at like Rita or whatever, but she has an at-large seat. It's kind of different. I think it's different, anyways.
Rita couldn't win in her district.
Exactly. Well, that's another point. Yeah.
So, because I've had this conversation about why don't we incentivize at-large races? Because what's the point? You get paid the same, all right? I was talking about potentially setting aside that only the mayor could come from the at-large pool, right? But there are people that are motivated to run at-large versus districts. If you want to talk about what people's motivations are, I mean, I've known people that are attorneys, they're contractors. They need the insurance.
Well,
I know
sure,
people that work for the state, work for a city, right? It affects their retirement system, right? Like what their retirement is. There's people that we know of, some of our friends, some of them are enemies. They sat in a city council race for 24, 26, 28 years, and then they punched their ticket with a gubernatorial candidate, and boom, they're pulling six figures, and their retirement goes from zero to living in Haverhill in the woods. All right.
With ADUs.
Not me, because I haven't been elected to anything. Who would elect me? All right. But you're talking about motivations. Why would people sit in a district race?
So I'm not
Or a
saying
district seat
I'm not
for
saying
20
no one
years?
would do it. I'm just saying that there's bound to be some natural turnover and some natural career advancement amongst some of the pool. Not that it's a rule that no one would. I'm not trying to rule out that someone would want to stay in a seat for forever. I'm just saying that it's possible or likely that a lot of these people are going to want to move on as well.
If they're getting what they want from it, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. I just think for the city to grow, so don't the people have to grow. So I agree with what you're saying, Ryan, because it's a job. Let's think of it as a job. You always want to move up, get better, do better. So that is I call it a game anyway. So that's the game to me. But why wouldn't we want that? For me personally, I don't want to see the same people, with the same stuff talking about something today, 10 years from now, because you really, unless you're somebody that's changing with the times, your ideas and your thoughts and what you can put into the city in itself will not change if you're complacent, because I think being in particular seat for too long, you do get complacent and you don't think about the new things that are out there and what's really going on in the city. You kind of stay stuck. And I think that's what's happened with our city council. Not now. I think this is still new, and I think it's great for the city, and I hope that it continues, because I think everybody is important and every district should have a voice.
If we've got 8 districts, I'm going to say 5 of the district councilors fit their district like a glove. It's really, unless someone really sticks out like a sore thumb and misrepresents, it's going to be hard. And then another part of it is, in order to get into the game, you have to know sort of people in the game. And there's a whole sort of pre-election sequence that happens. I mean, I remember hearing, there was some progressive folks that wanted to try to run a batch of candidates. Of all those, Amada is the only one that sort of, extruded out of that process. And I think it's part of, there's people that go around and they ask permission if they can run. And when they don't get the permission, they lose heart, and they don't. I mean, say what you want about Corey, what's his name? Robinson, right? Corey. That one.
Which Corey?
Corey. Yeah, that's right.
Corey R or Corey B?
But he
Right.
gave 0 F's about what anybody thought.
He's still
Okay.
He still doesn't.
Well, I mean, I know.
Let's look at his commentary today about
Right.
Governor Healy.
But I like
No housing secretary position for him in the Healy administration.
there were some odds stacked against him. Rob Gignek's a good guy, but that's a guy that's been aligned for a while and sort of laying sort of a crumb trail down to position himself. All right. Corey just pushed past that, and he doesn't respect people that sort of play into that whole game. All right. There's a way to be collaborative and be independent at the same time. But, these people, whether it's whatever district it is, right? Which in a way, that's why I said, if you want to run against Corey, come and talk to me. I'm not going to help you too much. All right. I'll help you out a little bit, right? But I'll get you going in the right direction. But all you have to do is watch these podcasts. I'll tell you the same thing here. Remember I said, what was it, Susie Chun, 2 podcasts ago? I was like, well, if she does this, this, and this, right? And I was like, oh, Kim's going to be bullshit with me, right? Because I'm a little bit. But the thing is, though, right, is Kim knocks the doors. So if she has a fear factor, don't you think it would be amplified or diminished based on what kind of responses she's getting at the door? This is a woman of confidence. All right?
All right. I think we're going to end it there. Because Ryan's going to run.
I gotta go. I gotta go to Mount Pleasant. We were talking about Long Meadow the other day. I got a sports banquet to attend. So.
Find out what they're saying there. Mona Tyree, Ryan Gilday, the Lowell Citizen, Jack Mitchell, member of the Pod Spot. Thank you so much. I think now folks have a little bit of a sense of who you are and where you're coming from when you join us again on election night.
Awesome.
Thank you. And thank all of you for joining us as well here on Inside Lowell. As we like to say, Inside Lowell. If Lowell is your home, this is your place. Till next time, be safe.